Iraqi Army. I was dealing with Iraqi Army colonels and generals more than I was maneuver infantry units. But I was dealing back in the international zone with U.S. military that were also advising the Ministry of Defense and Interior. And one of the things I bring out in my book was the complete lack of coordination, the dysfunctionality of this three-star command of the Multinational Security Transition Command Iraq, and the total dysfunction between the military and the civilian contractors that were there to help them. In the first segment, you asked me, what was it, a progressive thing? What was it that got to me? I mentioned the issue of realizing very early on that really I was a warm body, nothing more. I'll give you another example. I'm actually a commercial real estate guy. I've been in commercial real estate for about 23 years. And my job was involved in getting the Iraqi Army, its land, its bases, its facilities, the construction. I was an advisor on all that. It was the infrastructure of the new army. You can't recruit a soldier and give him a weapon and a uniform without a place for him to operate out of, and that's what I did. So I'm there about a month, and I gathered all these coalition, it was really U.S. Military, and I'm like the only civilian, and I gather all these military because no one's talking to each other, and I gather them all together, and we're talking about land, basing, construction for the Iraqi Army, and it comes out that they're grabbing land from Iraqis without securing the title to it. And I go, well, I've done some research here, and there is private ownership in Iraq. There's about 5 different forms of ownership. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And I said, well, if we're here to, if we're exporting democracy, guys and gals, and if we're exporting democracy and the rule of law, doesn't it make sense to get title like we would in the States? And it was like I was talking to a wall. And that was just an example of all the problems that I had. At one point, Scott, this is no lie, there were 125,000 claims for land that had been wrongfully taken from its rightful Iraqi owners.
Yeah, that's the American way. Eminent domain. The people own everything before an individual does. Just like American communism, only exported.
Well, you know what? The thing about it was, in the initial stages of the war, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers actually did take the steps to secure the land legally. It was after the initial phases in like 2004 that the transition from coalition back to Iraqi control, it was all this transition. It was then that we got lazy. It was then that everything just, the rule of law just went right out the window.
But now, so at this big meeting, I understand that your focus was on, more narrow topics and whatever. But, I mean, these 3 stars, they knew who, right? I mean, come on, they had to have known who the Bada Brigade was, right?
Sure they did. They did.
It seems like, I don't know. Well, anyway, I got, it's too long of a comment / question coming out of my mouth right now with the music already playing. So just hang on. We'll come back from this break and more with Michael O'Brien. He's got one at Antiwar.com, and his website is americasfailureinairaq.com.
Shop at Amazon.lrn.fm, and a portion of Amazon's profits benefit the Liberty Radio Network. Amazon.lrn.fm.
All right, kiddos, welcome back to the show. It's Anti-War Radio. Appreciate y'all tuning into the show today. Coffee's finally kicking in a little bit here. I'm doing a little better. I'm talking with Michael O'Brien. He's got one at Antiwar.com today. And he's also got a website, americasfailureinairaq.com. Antiwar.com. The piece on Antiwar.com today is called "Do Americans Know What Happened in Iraq?" And I guess I'm still stuck on, did they ever know what was happening in Iraq, and including the commanders there? Obviously, the entire war was a giant mix of evil and stupid. And, here these guys, we just fought a war for Iran. Really, Ahmed Chalabi, according to the CIA and the DIA, was an Iranian spy. He didn't just let them know after Doug Feith told him that America was tapping all of the Iranians' communications, but he actually was sent by them to lie us into war in the first place, to get rid of their old enemy Saddam Hussein and turn the country over to the Ayatollah Sistani, which is what has happened. They've taken all of everything from Baghdad to Basra. And then the one Shiite nationalist leader, Muqtada al-Sadr, America did nothing but accuse him of being an Iranian and attack him over and over again and drive him into the arms of Iran when he was the one nationalist in the country. So I guess what I was getting at the end of that thing was when we went out to break there, Michael, was that you guys basically were in the middle of fighting a civil war on behalf of Iran against the Sunni minority, and particularly I guess you can't call it an ethnic cleansing, but a religious cleansing, more or less, or something, sectarian cleansing, as they like to call that, the expelling of the Sunni population from Baghdad and the consolidation of power by the Iranians over that land. And yet at the same time, especially this is the era when you were there, 2006 and 7, this was when, more than any other time, they were trying to pretend that Muqtada al-Sadr was an Iranian agent, and they were attacking Muqtada al-Sadr and driving him into the arms of the Iranians. And I just wondered, whether they were doing it on purpose, and whether they knew that all that was going to do was, all their entire war was going to accomplish was making sure that they failed and were kicked out at the end of the day by the majority that, in fact, doesn't need them, like Saddam Hussein did.
Well, Scott, I honestly, I don't know. I mean, on the whole issue of Muqtada al-Sadr,
Well, and the Supreme Islamic Council, for that matter. I mean, really, Bush preferred the scary guys, but they were even closer to the Ayatollahs in Iran than Sadr.
Don't know. I mean, all I can talk about, in my book, I talk about the reasons that we were given for going over there in 2003, and the lack of a connection between 9/11 and our invasion of 2003. And also the fact that our invasion of Afghanistan really made a lot of sense, but then we switch everything, it paddles in midstream, and we go to Iraq. I mean, I understand what you're saying about, the different factions and all, and I can definitely talk about
today the reason I'm going off about this is because, of course, the Sunday Times, Rupert Murdoch today is putting out a story that's blaming Iran for all of our problems in Afghanistan, which is basically the same narrative as 2007. The Iraqis can only build a bomb with a copper core because the Iranians are giving them to them. And they never proved that, but they said it 7 million times until everyone believed it was true, when really we were fighting for Iran in that war. That's what the surge was for, the surge for the Iranian Revolution in Iraq.
Well, don't know about that.
I do, because I know Gareth Porter. That's Gareth Porter's article on Antiwar.com today is, surge narrative, success narrative, huh? Here's what really happened. And, of course, we were covering it live day to day at the time, so, or not from there live, but you know what I mean. So anyway, I'm sorry. It's the number one thing that drives me crazy, and it's really the answer to, your article today. Do Americans know what happened in Iraq? No, they don't. They just fought a war for Iran. They gave up their next-door neighbor's kid, if not their own, to go fight a war on behalf of Iran. And no, they have no idea. And then I'd like to give you a chance, if I'll shut my mouth, and let you talk a little bit about what this new Fox News poll actually says about what the American people think about the Iraq War here. Well,
it was very interesting, that poll, the Fox News poll, and as I say in my article, it asks some very, very basic questions. Do you think the war was a success? Yes, no. Do you think it was the right thing to do? Yes, no. But as I mentioned in my article, and I looked at the poll, and it doesn't ask other questions, kind of like qualifying questions. Have you ever been to Iraq? Yes, no. Have you ever read a book on Iraq? Yes, no. Do you have any idea how many Iraqis died as a result of our invasion? Yes, no. And obviously, of the 900 people that were polled by telephone, of course, this is just conversation, but I'd venture to say of 900 people, maybe 20 would say, yes, I've been to Iraq. They'd be former contractors or servicemen. Maybe 10 would say, I've read a book on Iraq. And maybe 5 would say maybe 3 would say that they have an idea of how many Iraqis died.
Yeah, maybe one of them would say they listen to this show.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of people that feel that the Iraq War was a mistake. A lot of people that I talk to that think it was a mistake. And the thing is that, I believe that the Iraq War was a mistake because we were not given direct, real, solid reasons for invading. We didn't invade with enough forces. We disbanded the Iraqi Ministry of Defense and Interior. And when we did that, we did two things. We took away the ability, the inherent internal ability of the country to defend itself with our help and oversight. Three things. We fired every national policeman, which was the size of an army, and every soldier who now hates the United States because they don't have a job. And the third thing is we provided fresh recruits for the insurgency, all with their weapons. And when that was done by Paul Bremer, what we did was, there are people that say that we ended the Gulf War in 91 because we wanted to prevent a power vacuum in Iraq. Well, that is exactly what we did in 03-04. We created the very power vacuum that we were told we didn't want to create in 1991. And then on top of all this, we did nothing for about 3.5 years under the command of General George Casey, who is now the Army Chief of Staff. That's a whole other topic. He did nothing for about 3 years. He was there, I think, 2.5 years as the commander. And it was not until the National Security Advisor, Stephen Hadley, and his aide, Megan O'Sullivan, went to George Bush and said, Mr. President, this is not going well at all. We've got to do something. And that actually eventually led to the surge. And I do want to say one other thing while I've got this opportunity, Scott. There's a little known fact that a lot of people do not know about. I'm sitting at my desk in Iraq one day, and a guy sends me an email, and it was a link to a Washington Post article dated August 6, 2007. And when he was the very first commander of the unit that I was attached to, the Multinational Security Command in Iraq, David Petraeus, as a 2-star general, ordered 190,000 AK-47s and other weapons for issue to the Iraqi Army and the National Police, and they disappeared. And the article
that was when he was in charge of Mosul, right? That was like the
No.
first little mini awakening. I'll bribe everybody by arming them up. But then when he left, they all just used the weapons to fight. Hey,
Well,
can I keep you another 10-minute segment here?
You can.
I like asking you questions. You have interesting things to say. Everybody, it's Michael O'Brien. He's written his first piece for Antiwar.com. Do Americans know what happened in Iraq? And his website is americasfailureInIraq.com. That's the name of his book. And we'll be right back to finish this up. Jeremy Sapienza's in the place. And Angela Keaton, too. Hang tight.
You're listening to the best liberty-oriented audio streamed around the clock, on the air and online. This is the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. It's Antiwar Radio. I'm Scott Horton. I'm talking with Michael O'Brien. He's written his first piece for Antiwar.com. Do Americans know what happened in Iraq? And, of course, the answer is no. They don't have any idea. And when we were going out to break, you were talking about Petraeus in Mosul back when he was a 2-star. Go ahead.
Well, actually, it was when he was the commander. I don't believe it was Mosul. He was the commander of the Multinational Security Transition Command Iraq, which was down in the Green Zone at the time. He was the first commander of it.
This must have been after Mosul then.
Yeah,